Welcome to 10th or Tuesday, episode number 15. Today we are commemorating the 89th day that the GOP has failed to repeal Obamacare. And Mike Maharrey, my cohort here, we've got a bunch of reports that we're going to be covering since we've been gone we haven't done this for a couple of weeks. I actually took a very rare vacation. I had a week off to celebrate my partner Sarah, her 40th birthday. And talking about Obamacare, Mike, there's a number of bills, nullification bills or bills to advance liberty that have moved forward or passed in the states. But before we get to that, a couple of other big reports that I want to cover from the past 2 weeks. First of all, over in Arizona, House Bill 2477, the one taking on asset forfeiture. Give us a little rundown what happened over there.
So, huge win. The governor signed that bill into law this week. And while a lot of people will look at it and say it's a modest reform, and it is modest, it does not require conviction, but it does raise the evidentiary standard necessary to complete a forfeiture proceeding. But the most important thing, it does include language to close the loophole. It will keep Arizona police from passing off cases to the federal government and getting money back through the equitable sharing program.
So what happens on that? And this was a big thing here in California, because California had a couple of years ago had some extremely strict limits on the use of asset forfeiture. So what police just did was they said, okay, well, we're doing an end run around state law, and we're going to partner with the Department of Justice through, as you mentioned, Mike, equitable sharing. And so then they just say, oh, this is a federal case now. They turn it over to the feds, and then they still get to participate in it, and they get up to, I think it's like 80% of the funds taken. So basically, they're still doing what they're told not to do by partnering with the feds. Right. And this bill in Arizona closes that loophole in most situations, correct?
It does indeed, and it was signed into law. And this bill passed overcoming an extremely heavy law enforcement lobby, which coming out of Arizona is not surprising. But I was very surprised, honestly, when I first heard that they were going to try asset forfeiture reform in Arizona. I said, no way. And they managed to get it done. There was a number of people on the ground there in Arizona, including our own Joel Olcott and Michael Gibbs, that really put in a lot of work, calling legislators, going to committee hearings, doing conference calls. And a strong group of activists got this done, and it just goes to show what can be done at the state level when people put their minds to it.
Yeah, that also, I believe the Arizona Campaign for Liberty was working hard on that as well. So It was a really, really good grassroots effort. It's
a great coalition.
I was surprised that Ducey signed it. He's been pretty bad on a number of things over the years. So it's good to see this happen. And we'll be talking about a few other bills in Arizona here very shortly. But moving over to Montana, this is one that we've been following. Gary Marbut at MTSSA is one of the leading gun rights activists on a state level in the country. He's been doing this for decades, and he worked with, I can't remember, I think it's Senator Kerry Smith, I think is his name, Senate Bill 99 in Montana. And I think the best way, we've been calling it a gun rights sanctuary bill, because if you talk about these sanctuary cities or the California sanctuary state immigration bill, they're basically saying that, you know, they're not going to participate in federal immigration enforcement, and people who want federal immigration enforcement don't like it. So the same goes for, and I don't think anyone's arguing that those efforts, whether they're right or wrong or good or bad, that they aren't effective. Obviously, they're doing what the people who are pushing them want them to do. So you can take this exact same approach, and James Madison advised his approach for the right to keep and bear arms. And that's exactly what passed. It's to the governor, is that correct? I don't think it's signed yet.
It is. No, it's not signed yet. And if anybody is listening from Montana, you should call your governor and encourage him to sign this, because he's claimed to be a big Second Amendment guy, and he tends to veto Second Amendment bills. So hopefully he will sign this bill into law. It would prohibit state and local enforcement of any future federal ban. And basically, it defines federal ban as any restrictions on firearms, accessories, and ammunition. And
actually, I think the bill it goes beyond any future ban. It's anything. So the way that they did the definition,
any federal ban.
It's not just federal. I know future. I know some states have just kind of tried to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, going forward. But this one is really very broad, and it applies to most federal gun laws on the books. It should apply to all, but we'll take most at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Senate Bill 99, and that's off to the governor's desk in Montana. It passed by a pretty good margin, not veto-proof, but the so-called gun rights guy should be signing it. I know he's vetoed similar bills in the past, but we'll see on this time now that there's a Republican in Washington, D.C. Also in Montana, a bill we just reported on yesterday that was signed over the weekend. I know there's actually two, but let's just cover the one on the license plate reader. We've talked about this in a previous episode, House Bill 149 in Montana, that would actually restrict the use of what are called ALPRs, or license plate readers, and the transfer of any data collected by them to the federal government, which is actually relying on state and local law enforcement to create a huge nationwide license plate tracking program, and has been doing it for 8 or 9 years at this point.
Yeah, this is a great bill. It's a very solid bill. It restricts sharing. It restricts retention of data, and also restricts what police can use these license plate readers for. So probably one of the stronger license plate tracking bills that I've seen signed into law. Really excited that this got through the Montana legislative process.
Again, I'm surprised that Bullock signed the thing. He generally vetoes things that are any good, but maybe we're onto a trend here. Ducey signed something that we didn't expect to in Arizona. Bullock signed one, and we're going to take these wins as we can get them and hopefully build on them going forward. But as I mentioned, Mike, Obamacare. So I think this is going to be our theme for a very long time. What day? We're day 89 today on the Republicans failing. I don't expect them to ever get rid of it. In fact, the AHCA, or whatever they call it, we've been republishing some great reports by Michael Cannon from Cato Institute. He's like the foremost expert on this kind of stuff, and he's been kind of going over the details of what they've been doing. And I think the short version is very straightforward. The AHCA, or anything that they've been presenting so far, is not a repeal. They are not repealing Obamacare. In fact, the bill itself, all it does, even in the bill, it says it amends the Affordable Care Act. So this is an amendment to the bill. It's garbage. They're not going to get the job done that they're supposed to be doing. So that's why it's really important for states to take action. And one bill that I like that hasn't gotten a lot of attention went to the governor in West Virginia to withdraw the state from operating an Obamacare exchange. You know, when I was looking through your report, I think you said it passed unanimously, at least in the Senate. Is that right?
It did. It passed 99-0 in the House, and it passed I don't have the Senate vote, but it was the House where it passed 99-0.
Okay, and then I think, I'm looking at it right here, 34-0 in the Senate. So unanimous all around. They're basically saying, this is Democrats and Republicans. It's Republican dominated there, but the Democrats join them saying, hey, look, we don't know what's going on. We don't like this stuff. It's not doing well. So why should we run this thing for the federal government? This is one of the most important things that states can very easily do right now, while waiting for Washington, D.C. to fix the problem that it created for itself and for all of us. Just simply stop helping the federal government run the thing. We hear from President Trump pretty often, like, the thing's going to implode. Well, if the states keep running it for the feds, I don't think it'll ever implode. It'll just cause a lot of problems. But if states do like what the West Virginia legislature is trying to get done, hopefully it'll get signed, then there's no way that the feds can operate this thing on their own. And especially if you have hopefully an unwilling Department of Health and Human Services. I mean, it remains to be seen, but certainly it's going to be more difficult if the states aren't participating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it becomes impossible when you look at all of the different things that happen at the state level. And this is just the first step, but the states could do more. And that's what we'd really like to see. We'd like to see some of these states build on that and stop your insurance commissioners from enforcing provisions of the act. I mean, that's the enforcement arm. It's the state insurance commissioners. I love the bill that just says, you know what, we're not going to enforce any of the federal mandates. Let the federal government enforce them. Perfectly legitimate under the anti-commandeering doctrine. And that could really shut it down fast, I think.
I do want to apologize, though. It looks like we got it a little bit backwards here. It was the Senate that passed it unanimously. It passed by a pretty wide margin. It looks like veto-proof in the House. That's going to the governor. I think we should know in the next few days whether it's signed or vetoed, but it is a veto-proof majority in both chambers, and that's House Bill 2199 if you're in West Virginia. We do, like Mike, you were saying on the Montana Second Amendment bill, we encourage you to call the governor there and encourage him to sign the bill into law, even if you don't expect him to do it. Some pressure would actually be very helpful. Now, as far as we're talking about sanctuary a little bit. Why not create a healthcare sanctuary? Some advancing some health freedom. And we've seen a number of bills. We've talked about this previously as we've been monitoring this Obamacare situation here. But there's been a number of bills getting to the governor, and like in Arkansas, signed into law, a direct primary care bill. Give us a quick overview for people who aren't aware of what that is, Mike.
Direct primary care is a great system. It's something that I would love to use, and actually we passed it here in Kentucky, so hopefully we'll see.
Was it signed in Kentucky too? I don't remember.
It was signed in Kentucky. So, and it's a simple bill. It allows doctors to create what they call direct primary care practices, where you pay a subscription rate. Essentially, you pay a set amount a month, and then you have unlimited doctor's visits, unlimited prescriptions, et cetera, that are all the things that are stipulated within your agreement. And these bills just say that they're not insurance, and it keeps it from being regulated under the state insurance regulations. So it encourages and incentivizes the creation of these type of practices. And of course, they create great, amazing cost savings when the doctor can just free himself from the entire insurance and government and Medicaid bureaucracy. So these are great bills, and they do what Obamacare promised. They create cost controls. They create options.
Yeah, market-based.
So they're delivering. Yeah, they're delivering what Obamacare failed to.
Right.
And I love this approach, and I would love to see more creative ways of creating new healthcare environments and healthcare systems within the states that would just undercut Obamacare.
So yeah, the more that people actually engage in things that the federal government tries to control or kind of push to the sidelines. Marijuana is a great example. The feds prohibit it, but all these states are saying, hey, we're going to allow it anyways, and people do it. If the feds aren't trying to ban direct primary care, but they're actually trying to control the healthcare industry completely. Right. So the more that people actually engage in market-based healthcare services, the more that opens it up and creates more options. And then it's going to be much more difficult for the feds to do it unless they try to outlaw such things in the future. But if it comes to that, we'll deal with it at that point. So signed into law in Arkansas, that goes into effect in the next few months. It's also on the governor's desk, I believe, in Indiana, Colorado, Maryland, Maryland too, even.
Maryland.
Yeah, so a bunch of states that have been pushing these
Maybe
forward.
Florida.
And Mike, from my understanding, in every one that we've been covering, the vote margins are huge. It's not even close, right?
I've never seen one of them this close. And most of the time, it's actually unanimous.
Okay.
Or you'll have one or two dissenting votes. And
some jerk who's like, no one should be able to make an agreement with some provider unless we control them.
Probably somebody with insurance stock.
Yeah, right. That's exactly how it goes.
Right.
Okay, one other thing I want to cover, this looks like it's going to be a little bit longer episode than what we normally do, is hemp. You just wrote a report that we ran just earlier today, or yesterday actually, from Missouri. This is from Representative Paul Kurtman to create a commercial hemp farming industry. He's been sponsoring bills over the last couple of legislative sessions there, and they've either been getting out of one house or they've been running into some problems, but it looks like things are moving ahead over in Missouri. It's House Bill 170, right?
Yes, indeed. And I was very excited. A lot of these hemp bills, you see them and they have amendments. And every time I see amendments, I say, oh, no, they've ruined the bill. And this amendment actually made the bill better. The bill originally would require growers to grow more than 2.5 acres. So it would have basically shut out smaller farmers or home growing. And they actually cut that out in an amendment so anybody can grow on any size plot. So actually made the bill better and passed by a pretty wide margin. I don't remember what that vote count was off the top of my head, but there was only
like 120 to something.
To 20. Yeah.
So I know in previous years there's been a lot of law enforcement opposition, and Kurtman was trying to be strategic from my understanding, saying, okay, we're going to just have a very small kind of limited thing. Well, we're not going to just let everybody grow hemp, this to kind of appease the cops. But then it looks like that never worked anyways. They didn't get passed by appeasing them in the first place. So it's good to see that, if it doesn't get through the Senate, at least they're going for something better that says, okay, anybody can grow this stuff, and this is an agricultural product. We know it has a lot of uses, from oil to paper to clothing to food products to health and beauty products. It's used for all kinds of stuff. So we'd love to see this move forward and get signed into law in Missouri, as it's happened in a number of other states already. Also, West Virginia. West Virginia last year had passed what was one of these research program laws, basically following the 2014 federal farm bill that said you can do research under the guidelines or under the auspices of a university or a college program, not for commercial general production, but
Right.
just to study it, to find out if there's any use, even though we know that it can be used in thousands of products.
Stupid.
So, well, I mean, it looks like, and I've actually been a naysayer of these laws. Like, okay, they're being wimps. They're just doing what the feds authorized. And I didn't even think that someone might actually come around and, learn from it. Say, okay, maybe the general public sees that there's a little bit of hemp growing and says, okay, well, why can't more people do this? And this is exactly what happened in West Virginia, isn't it?
Exactly. And they have amended that pilot program to create a full commercial hemp growing program. So they're going to allow licensing for individuals and just regular old farmers to grow hemp for commercial purposes, which defies the federal prohibition ban. And it's really interesting. As I was working on the report for this bill, I was looking at some of the reporting out of West Virginia, and a number of the newspapers there were talking about, hey, we've got this pilot program, and it just isn't working. We're not seeing the development that we want.
There's no hemp being grown.
There's no hemp. Exactly. So it's interesting. They saw that it wasn't working, and unlike my stupid state here in Kentucky that keeps beating their head against the federal government wall, West Virginia has passed this bill to expand their program, and that's the bill I was looking at actually, where it passed in the House, 99 to nothing.
99 to nothing in the House, 34-0 in the Senate. I think the governor will probably sign it. There's a lot of farmers there in West Virginia that want to. This is where your wife Cynthia is from, so this is really kind of exciting.
Exactly.
Maybe some of her family, are they farmers? Do you have any farmers in the family, or?
Well, only family that's still there is her mother. Her mother's not going to be doing any farming in the new.
Well, maybe she wants a garden patch of hemp. You could get a lot of food out of it. Well, I mean, in a way, that's kind of what happened in Vermont. People up in Vermont just started growing in their backyard because they can use it, and it's been banned. Like, we can grow tomatoes. Why can't we grow something else that we can eat?
Sure.
So I know a lot of people want to think that hemp is something that you smoke and get high, but anyone who thinks that is just totally uninformed. Ignorant is the proper term. So that's House Bill 2453. Again, call if you're in West Virginia, not out of state. If you're in West Virginia, call the governor and say, sign House Bill 2453 into law. And we'll be reporting on that hopefully in the next few days over at blog.10thamendmentcenter.com. More hemp bills. Representative Matt Shea, good friend of the TAC, had a bill in Washington state to decriminalize hemp. Now, this is a different approach. Instead of saying we're going to license for commercial purposes, the state is just going to take, they've already got full legalized marijuana. They're basically going to say, like, look, if you're growing hemp, you possess hemp, you buy hemp, sell hemp, whatever, transport it, we're not going to prosecute it. And the feds rely heavily on the states to handle all the enforcement of this. So it's going to be almost impossible if people in Washington state decide to start growing. So this is is it to the governor or is it signed? What's going on in Washington?
It went to the governor. Did it go to the governor or did it? Yes, it did go to the governor.
House Bill 2064.
Yep, and that's a great bill. It opens the door. So basically, if you live in Washington, go grow yourself some hemp.
So more bills to cover, Mike. Something that we've been monitoring the last couple of years is the Right to Try Act. For those of you who aren't aware, this is basically doing an end run around some, I think it's clearly unconstitutional FDA restrictions that tell terminal patients that they can't try some treatment that we don't know if it works yet. They might die. It's up to them.
Right.
That's got kind of a good overview of how it goes, right, Mike?
That's exactly. And even sadder, a lot of these treatments have been approved in Europe and are being successfully utilized over there. That's even more ridiculous when we know it's working, but because of bureaucratic red tape, they tell some poor guy in Idaho, no, you can't have this.
Die.
So
this has been signed into law in 30 plus states so far. It's a Goldwater Institute initiative. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It helps people. It shows that nullification helps people in need. And Alaska, Rhode Island, Maryland, we're seeing progress on right now. Just in the last, I mean, we're closing in on 40 plus states at this point. What's going on?
Yeah, it's great. I've been in touch with the aide for the state rep in Alaska that's running that bill through, and they got it through the House just last week and was talking to her, and she's really optimistic that they're going to be able to get it through the Senate this year as well. Last year, I think they got it through one chamber, but it kind of died. She's working really hard on that bill, and so I see that moving forward. And, this is another one of those things that once it gets introduced, it's pretty much a no-brainer. I think it passed in Maryland.
Oh, yeah, I made a mistake. I said the Maryland was the direct primary care.
Yeah, Maryland was right to try.
Hey, I've been on vacation.
It's okay, right to try, direct primary care.
I mean, in a way, it really is a very similar concept, because basically you're saying, the feds want to control this, say you can or cannot do this in this area, and the states are saying people and their doctors can make these decisions. And that's really the way it should be going anyways. People should be making these most important decisions. The most important decisions, life and death, should not be under the control of government. So it's absurd that these things happen. It's very common sense legislation to pass a right to try act. That's why it's going everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's Texas or not California yet. I don't know. But Maryland, Rhode Island, Alaska, Colorado, Arizona. It doesn't matter where it's going. It's passing by huge numbers. And it's on the governor's desk in Maryland. It passed one house, it looks like, in both Rhode Island and Alaska. Is that right, Mike?
I think that's correct, yes. Just last week.
Now, Mike, we've actually there were a lot more bills that we could cover, but this is kind of the meat of what's been happening the last 7 to 10 days. If you want to keep track of everything else that's going on, make sure to go to blog.10thamendmentcenter.com or sign up for our daily digest at 10thamendmentcenter.com/register. And we will be back here next week for 10th or Tuesday, episode number 16. Thank you so much for watching.